Your thoughts on whether Trump will be able to carry out these reductions? Is this a speed bump? Is it a roadblock? What do you think?
Well, it could be both. In this regard, irreparable harm is one of the standards that the moving party has to make. Also, likelihood of success on its merits. So when you get a federal judge to put an emergency hold on what the government is trying to do, it's pretty hard to turn that over. You'll have a TRO, restraining order, then you have a preliminary injunction, and then a permanent injunction if you can get there, and there'll be a trial. But the bottom line is this: these Republican judges, appointed by Trump, some of them, are really uncomfortable with the government's ability to slash and burn. Federal employment law is really difficult, it's complicated, and that's why you have this slew of lawsuits, not because no one wants the government to reduce its size and be more efficient. It's how it's being done. This is not a tech company. This is a public organization, a massive public organization, and there are processes and procedures, and then there's a lack of trust factor, even at the federal court level, if you ask me, based on what I've read. I have government employees calling me, should I take the buyout, should I not? I'm going to retire in 30 days anyway. And so it gets really, really complicated for their choices. Can the federal government keep their word if they do take the buyout? And there's a real question about that, not only in the courts, but in the political minds of all Americans.
We know Musk's popularity among voters has dropped. I want to ask your thoughts on his role within the Trump administration currently.
Well, it's unclear what his role is other than to slash and burn, that's for sure. And by the way, it's not Democrats complaining about this. My dad was a sitting state court judge. I agree with my colleague that judges rule on the facts and the law, but even judges are saying, stop the madness here. We're going to have an orderly process. And by the way, the real wrinkle in the Republican argument on this talking point is, why would you pay a number of employees $50,000 or more for 8 months to do nothing, but you're trying to get more efficient? It is completely inconsistent with what their goal and objective is. This is a purging of the federal government workforce with those who are not loyal to Trump or those who don't want to work for Trump. At least in part it is. So I think both sides are on the board with having a more efficient government. The real issue is how it's getting done, and is it being done legally? Elon Musk may be the boogeyman to the Democrats, but he's going to be the boogeyman to all Americans if this process doesn't work and it's not done legally. The problem with Elon Musk is this is fraught with peril because of the major conflicts. You cannot be a federal government employee and then be a $15 billion government contractor and then allow yourself to have access to competitive information that would only be part of a government contractor program or the one who's government employee who's implementing it. You can't have it both ways. And that's a huge issue. And that's the part of what's really being litigated in these federal cases. His role, not so much who he is, but how he's operating, and does he have a competitive advantage, and is he fraught with conflicts? I say yes, and the federal courts are going to say yes too, or have said yes already.
Scott, I'm running out of time, but I have to ask you, because I've heard so many Democrats bring this up in the past few days, in the past week. Where is the Democratic opposition? Who do you think is leading the charge here?
Well, there's several leaders, if you will. The congressional and Senate leaders have been protesting with these workers. The DNC has a new chair, but it's not so much about who's leading the charge. All of us can see the degradation that's being brought by this slash and burn approach, and it's just not fundamentally right. It's not democratic, and Americans have to decide as to whether they want to support this or not. They voted for Trump, they own Trump, and this is what you get. But that doesn't make it right, appropriate, fair, doesn't make it equality, and doesn't make it just for all of us.